Okay, so I've got my exterior starting to come together, and now I want to focus a bit more on the interior and look at using the modelling tools that you have in Revit. And so the first thing you need to learn with Revit and modelling is how to use model in place. We're going to go much further into using loadable families, which you can use with place a component later on. But for now, let's keep going with model in place. And I'm going to make some booth seating, which should give some good examples of how you can use different modelling tools. So I'm going to go again under component to model in place, and as usual it'll ask you for the category. So if you're not sure what to choose here, it's fairly intuitive, but if you're not sure, you can always use generic models, and that will work for most things, and you can change the category later. If you've made a mistake or if you decide to change it, you can. So generic models is a good all-round category to use. But I'm actually going to use casework. So you might have heard me say, I'm going to make booth seating, and you might be tempted then to use furniture. But I wouldn't recommend using furniture for this sort of furniture. Essentially, it's built-in furniture that I'm making, and the furniture category doesn't really work very well for built-in furniture because it doesn't show properly in a section, whereas casework does. So casework essentially is what you should use for built-in furniture. And click OK, and then I'm going to call it booth seating. And I'm going to try and fit it in on this wall up here, in this little area. Might end up moving it later on, but that's where I'll put it for now. And so notice I've got a section that is cutting through that area, and I've got the other section here that's looking towards that space. So I'll start very simply with a table, so just using the extrusion tool, and I'm going to draw a rectangle for my table leg and change the end, the extrusion end, to I want the table to be 600, so I might make I want the table to be 700, so I might make the leg 650, and I'm just going to draw a rectangle. That'll do. Keeping it simple. Tick to finish, and then I'll make another one. So I've gone back to the Create tab to get my modelling tools again. The really important thing I want to point out there is that I haven't gone to Finish Model. If I go to Finish Model and then come back and make a new one, then they won't be grouped together properly. So it's really important that you stay within the model and just keep going back to the Create tab so you can add more extrusions or other solids to the group. So again, back to extrusion, and I'll make another rectangle. Just going to adjust these. I'm not being too precious about the measurements. Can always adjust them. That'll do. Okay, so then I'm going to make the extrusion start 650 and the extrusion end 700. So now I'll have a basic tabletop, but it's starting to get a bit difficult to see what I'm doing because I don't have enough views. So I'm going to finish the model at that point, and I'm going to get that section that I mentioned and move it up a little bit so that it's gone past this wall, and now if I go to that view by either right-clicking or double-clicking on the arrowhead, or even just going down into the project browser and finding the section view there, now I can see my table and leg very clearly. And so then, before I go back, I'm going to also go to the ground floor plan and find the reference plane that I made that goes along that wall. And what you'll find when you're making things in different planes in Revit, it's really helpful to have reference planes to mark those locations, those planes that you want to use for modelling. So if it isn't already clear, I want to make something that's on the plane of that wall. So I've selected the reference plane there, and I'm going to click there to name it, and I'm just going to call that, well, it's probably not the north wall, but from my point of view it is, so I'm going to call it north wall for now. We can always change the name later, but north wall, as long as I know what it is. So now I'll go back to my section view. I'm going to then select my table and go to edit and place, so I can add more extrusions to it. Really important that you don't fall into that bad habit of going to model in place. Don't do that. Always, if you want to add things, select it and then edit in place to add more elements. Okay, so now I want to make an extrusion in this view. So back to the Create tab, I can click Extrusion just like before, but notice straight away it's going to bring up this option to choose a work plane. And that's because in a section view, it's not clear which plane I want to be drawing in. In a plan view, they assume it's the plane of the level you're working on. So in other words, when I made those rectangles, they're drawn on this ground plane, and then when they're given a depth, it goes up. So in the section view, again, you need to define the plane, but by going to the list there, I can choose the one I've just named, North Wall. And that's it, so I'll click OK. And then I'm going to draw my booth shape. So I'll start it down here. And so actually I'll just start in space, so I can come across and draw a line, cancel it, and then select that line to check the height. So I'm just going to make that 400 from the ground. Right, it's a fairly low seat, but they can be that height. And then come back and draw some more lines to finish that off. So it's sort of an unusual shape then that goes around and encloses this booth. So this is my time to be creative and do something, again, by eye that I'm happy with. Maybe something like that. So I'm just drawing another line from there to get the same height. And then doing the rest pretty much by eye. You can always select these lines using Control and use the arrow keys to nudge them into position. That's about right. And then again, I can just draw some more lines or use all of the other drawing tools like offset maybe. And I'll make this, let's say 150 offset, and I can pick these lines to offset them inwards. So it's just like I'm drawing in plan, but of course drawing on that wall surface. Just using trim. Okay, so that's my booth shape. So I'm going to make the extrusion start 0, and then the extrusion end is the amount I want this to come out from the ball. So let's say 800. Okay, so I'm going to finish that. So that's now extruded, and if I go back to the plan view, you can see it's gone the wrong way. And this happens quite often. It's all to do with the direction that reference plane was drawn, and there's no way I'm going to remember that. We did it a few weeks ago, and you don't have to remember. You can just use some trial and error to work it out. So if it's gone the opposite direction to what you want, simply change the extrusion end from positive to negative. It goes the other way. While I'm at it, I can also adjust my table. So if I go back to wireframe, I can see that maybe that leg can come down a little bit so that it's pretty much in the centre, and then this table, I can just stretch that by eye. Down a bit more. There we are. So then I'm going to finish the model and just remind you about what I said about materials before, to show you how lucky you are to be using the new version of Revit, because in the older versions, the ones before this one, this next process was a lot more work, but it's much easier now with 2018. So I'm going to just make a camera view. So I'm looking at my little booth. There it is. Yep. So that shows you a simple example using an extrusion that's not in the ground plane to make a standard design element. And it shows you hopefully that you don't have to use all of these more complicated tools. They all have their purpose, but often I see people who don't know the first thing about setting a different plane. In other words, all they can do is make things from the ground plane, but then they know how to use blends and revolves. But revolve basically is a useless tool if you can only use it from the ground plane, because there aren't many very good things that you can make by revolving a shape from the ground. But I'll show you in a minute. I will show one example with a revolve that works really well to make something that looks nice, but not from the ground plane. So here again, that's a good one with the extrusion from the wall. So I'm going to finish it, and I've done that so I can save my file. Okay, so that's the big limitation with Revit. You can't save in sketch mode. In other words, if I was editing that object and it says finished model, when I click save, it'll tell me that it can only save up to the previous time I finished the model, essentially. You can't save midstream. So you just need to finish your model so you can save the file. Right, so now I've finished it again, and I want to assign a material. And this is the problem I said that a lot of people have with Revit, and they just, I think, forget. So they go to select this object and then look over here. They're used to going to properties to find the material, or they click edit type, and they still can't find it. You might think, oh, finished, that's a material. Nope, it won't do anything. What do you think you have to do if you want to assign materials now to these different parts? No, that paint won't even work here. So I know a lot of people get shown paint. I'll show you what happens if you go to paint. I can choose the wall and the floor. Can't choose this thing. There is a way to use paint with it, but it's not going to work on its own. So what everyone forgets, well, a lot of people forget, is that you need to select the object and then go to edit and place to get back to the part where you can assign the materials. So now notice I can select these things. Now here I could use paint. You can see I can then select all the different faces, but that's a lot of work. There are lots of faces there. It's much easier just to select the object and then come over here and you've got the material right there.
What if you want to do that to have different, like, not just those two materials?
Yeah, then you would use paint. That's when you use. That's the time you use paint. Yeah, yeah, that's good. So yeah, so here again, I'll browse, and I'll just get a nice, or a wood material that happens to be there. Sash is what it's called. It's a wood though, so I'm going to duplicate it. I'm going to call it timber furniture. Back to appearance. I don't want the birch, so I'm going to replace it. And go to the appearance library, and the wood folder there has lots of other wood. Cherry, maybe, or something like that. What have we got? Yeah, maybe the oak. Make that stain a bit lighter. Maybe two. That'll do. Okay, so I might put a little bit of varnish on it. That's my material. But if I go to realistic, you can see it didn't get assigned just like before. You sometimes have to go and assign it twice. But there you can see now that's obviously coming up. And while I'm at it, I'll get the table and the the tabletop will make a different material. So here again, I'll duplicate this one because I can, and I'm going to call this plastic. This will be for my laminate, essentially. Plastic or laminate. I'll do my usual red that I do for anything to do with food. Just probably lazy, but that's what I do. So again, replace, and we'll go to plastic and just get one of these smooth red, fine. And yep, that'll do. Might tick use render appearance this time under graphics, and again first go it often won't assign, but you just need to come back and do that again and it works. There we are. And then maybe the leg I'll make wood again, or the timber. So that easy. And then I might think, oh god, I don't like that red. So I'm going to go back, select it, just to remind you, edit in place, then I can select that piece and obviously get to the material. So maybe I just want plain white, and there's one there already that I can use without even making it. That's grey. So I'll go and fix that. Oh god, how can they? Yeah, he wants grey. Yeah. That's better. So again, think about how you can use extrusion, particularly in different planes, and it can be any plane. It doesn't even have to be a vertical or a horizontal plane. It can be a plane at any angle, and that can open up a lot of options for you. But I will just show you one simple example using one of the other tools, just so we can start on that. So I'm going to go back to, I'm going to use model in place. And I'll just tell you, normally to make the next thing, I'm going to make an Ottoman. So I'm sure you're all pretty comfortable with what I showed you. So normally to make an Ottoman, that's something that will be repeated, and I would make that in a separate file. So I'd use a family file for that. I'm just going to show you with model in place just to continue with the modelling tools. So again, under component, model in place, and this time I will use the furniture category, so you can see in a minute what the difference is. And we'll call it Ottoman. And so before, I'm going to use a revolve. That's all I want to show you, how you use the revolve tool. Before I use that, I'm going to make a reference plane. I'm just going to draw this out in the empty space there. I'm just going to have this as a little floating Ottoman. There's my little plane. I'm going to select that and call it Ottoman plane. So it's just like a vertical sheet of paper or a drawing board sticking up from the ground. And so now I can go to my section view over here. And even though we can't see it, we're looking at that plane. We're looking towards it. So then I'm going to go to revolve. And again, because I'm in a section, it'll ask me for the plane. But again, because I've named it, I can choose it from the list there, Ottoman plane. That's really the reason you give names to these planes, so that you can choose them from the list. Click OK. And then I'm just going to draw a, I'll just do a rectangle. Just over here. And, okay, so that's a bit high. I'm going to make it height of a normal Ottoman. They do vary quite a bit, but let's say 450 maybe we'll go with. And then the width, I want to make this a fairly narrow one, so maybe I want it to be maybe 800 wide, maybe even less, maybe let's say 700 wide actually. So this has to be half of that width, which will be 350. You'll see if it's not clear why it's half, you'll see in a moment. So then the key here is that I'm going to round off the corners. And I'll just leave it sitting on the ground. I won't even worry about doing legs just yet. We can put legs in later, but I'll just leave it without them for now. So I'm going to use fillet arc up in the draw panel there. It's the second last button in that second row. I'm going to choose the two lines that I want rounded, and then just place the curve between them. Yeah, that's it, yeah. Yeah. And so then it'll give me a chance again, if I want to adjust that radius, to just type in what I want. So maybe I want it to be a bit less, maybe 40, maybe 50. And then I'm just going to do the same with the two lines at the bottom, and make it have the same radius. So that's it, that's all I'm going to do. For the profile, it's an Ottoman. Yeah, just a basic like puff thing, yeah. So then I've been drawing boundary lines. So this is just like when you make an extrusion, you draw the shape. But then the thing you need that's extra with a revolve is the axis. So you have to draw an axis line as well. It's just below boundary line, up there. And I want it to revolve around this straight edge on the side. So I'm going to draw the axis just above that so that you can see it. Let's draw that up above. So that's like the pin that we're going to spin our profile around. And that's it, I'll finish it. And we've got a very basic Ottoman. So if we go back to that perspective view, we should be able to see it. Just use the model, and we can adjust the view so that you can. There we are. So we couldn't get that from extrusion because of the rounded corners. So once you've got that basic shape, you'll see Ottomans, they're really popular again at the moment, so you can easily adjust that to get variations on it that should look pretty good. So remember to assign materials. Even though there's only one part to it, we still need to select it, edit in place, select it again, go over and get a material, or maybe I'll make a furniture or fabric Ottoman. Replace the appearance, and I'll go to the fabric folder there, and you'll see we've got quite a few to choose. Don't want to go with boring brown. Yeah, velvet, there we go. Velvet's even making a comeback somehow. So there we are. Still didn't get assigned. So annoying. Just got to remember to do that twice. If it doesn't come up and you think you've done it all right, you probably have. There it is. So I'll finish that and I'll show you again how easy it is to get variations on that. If I copy it now, you've probably seen the flatter ones that have more of a dip in the middle that are pretty nice, and so you can easily adjust that profile. Now, watch out when that happens. This is good because it shows you why sometimes model in place isn't your friend. It's good for one-off things, but notice I copied that one, and then when I go to edit it, it's gone back to the original position. It's just one of those things, and that's why you'll do... Oh no, they're not linked. No, it just isn't clever enough to update the position. But no, they're not linked, they're independent. Yeah. But here again, it's gone off. I can drag it across, but yeah, you shouldn't have to do that. It's just the way Revit is. And it's in the end, it's not a huge problem because you can, with loadable families, avoid all those problems. But anyway, I just wanted to show you how you can do a different profile very easily. So with Edit Revolve, there's my profile again, and we could make it flatter or lower. Bring these. Oh, yeah.
So, if you wanted, so instead of Ottoman, and that was actually sort of a planter,
Yeah.
you actually make that a div?
Oh yeah, you can cut a hole out. You can use a void. I haven't shown you voids, but I should have shown you that you can use voids to cut out any parts of these that you like with another 3D shape.
Okay.
So you can make void extrusions and void revolves and any shape you like with a void and subtract? Yeah, yeah, sure. So, what's a good example there? I can't think of one with this Ottoman, but I'll show you one with the booth. I'll come back to the booth. So I'll just finish this and I'll put in a different arc just so you can see how to try out different things here. So you might have, this sort of dipping thing that you see quite a lot today, and that have usually a bigger radius. And then we can still use fillet arc to get a curve in between here sometimes, but it doesn't always work the way you want it to. No, that's not working. So in that case, I would just draw in some more arcs. There we go. And bring this back even further and just keep adding them. Yeah. So that now probably would just have a line, and in thin lines that'll be a lot easier. There you see. Yeah. So that could be my new shape. So again, just get that view to come out a bit more. So let's see. Okay, so you can get lots of variations just using the same tools. And yeah, so to show you subtractions or voids, I'll go back to that original one. Oh no, that's right, exactly. Yeah, that's right, yeah, it's a good point. Yep, so I'll just do that. So here, yep, we can change that. So I'll maybe call this cane or something. Cane Ottoman. And that can be replaced. And there's actually something in fabric. Yep, here we go, the caning, any of those. Okay. Pretty good material. And again, it's probably going to want me to do it twice. Yep. Shows me there. Yeah. So yeah, so then if I go back to that booth, then maybe I want to have some holes cut into that. So I'll select it, go back to edit in place, and then maybe I'll just do something simple if I go to the ground floor plan, and I'll do a void. So you've got, at the end of all those solids, you've got void forms, and then I'll go to void extrusion, and then I'll just make a rectangular shape, maybe that goes through the middle there. And I'll make the extrusion start, well, maybe at least 400 or so off the ground, and I'll make the extrusion end, say, 1500. I'm going to finish that, and then have a look in my, I'll actually go to my 3D view, so you can see there it's cutting through. So it's just a rectangle, but because it's cutting through above the ground, it's creating that sort of window effect. So yeah, you can subtract in any direction with any of those solid modelling shapes that you have. To create things, you can create voids in the same way. And yeah, so I mean, you can be really creative with those tools. And just remember, these are the tools, or these are the modelling methods that are used in the building industry. So if you make something with one of those tools, it can be made in a joinery or a cabinet making workshop. It can be made by builders on site, and you can basically get it built. There are more advanced modelling tools, much more advanced than this, and you can make anything that you can think of, but you can't always get those things to be built. They don't follow the same manufacturing process. And yeah, it was interesting. We had a guy he's actually a pretty good designer, but he's in final year now, and he wanted to do all these really complex curves in his in his flooring. And it should have been simple, but he'd used splines to create the curves. Builders can't make splines. So there's no way they could have cut those patterns, even just to set down on the floor. It's virtually impossible. And I asked him, I said, well, how do you expect to make these things? And he just said, oh, laser cut, because he'd heard about it, laser cutting. Well, you can't bring a laser cutter into a site to have it cut your floor shapes up. And it wasn't hardwood flooring, he wanted carpet and all sorts of soft things, and you can't laser cut carpet, as far as I know. You know, there are ways of making carpet into different shapes. They don't do it in that way. So you need to have some idea about the way things are made. But again, with Revit and tools like it, you've got tools that basically follow the standard manufacturing process.
And if you needed to add cushions to your wood,
Yeah.
or is that a separate?
Yeah, well, look, cushions can be tricky because cushions are an organic form. So that is one thing where I'd say, I normally don't say get it from a library that you've downloaded, but that's something I would usually just try and download. Oh yeah, if you just want to do a little circular cushion, you can model it. But if you want a proper, cushion that looks like a tapering, nice soft cushion, you'll find them. If you search Revit City or even the library that we've got here, I've got a few cushions in there, and you can just place them and grab them from the library. They work really well. So I thought that might get you started on the setup of the things you need for your interior. So maybe another thing you could try would be maybe a reception desk or a reception counter if that suits your scheme. There are all sorts of benches and other furnishings that you'll have in a retail space like this that you can make in that way. And
Would you ever recommend maybe someone else's models? Like if there was a model
yeah, of course.
and you just edit those?
Of course, yeah. And that's actually one of the main reasons I show this, because you can't really edit other people's models until you know how to use the modelling tools. So yeah, like I'm happy for you to go and work with other people's, and you probably find that you can fix them and make them work properly once you know how to model. Oh, some of them are shocking. Just, yeah. But you can usually... Yeah. No, it's good. And then you see, even the ones from the manufacturers, often are terrible. But they give you something, a starting point. They've done some of the work for you, but then you can make them work properly once you know how to model. So